Welcome to my top 10 games on PC in 2024. So this year has been pretty slow, at least when it comes to new releases. After the first half of the year, we started getting big games, new stuff, which was a lot of fun. But I felt like it was way slower than 2023, which makes sense. Next year, I think the big stuff is coming, GTA 6, hopefully, and other big games that are being released. I'm not calling them next-gen games because technically we're still playing PS4 and Xbox One, and the PS5 and Series X and S are already 4 years old, which is pretty funny. I'm thinking this generation is just getting started. So disclaimer before starting, this is my opinion, these are games on PC, this includes PC ports, remasters, remakes, and entirely new games released this year on PC. So let's get into it right away, and I hope you enjoy. Number 10, Forgive Me Father 2 1.0. So Forgive Me Father is an indie game that is a mix basically of Doom with Lovecraftian themes. I find it to have a lot of personality and impact to the guns. So this game was early access since last year, but now we got the 1.0 version, which I consider a new release. There's new weapons, there is more levels. Although the game is only like 4 to 5 hours long, I think for an indie game it's pretty impressive. I'm pretty disappointed about the performance, but when it comes to how impactful is the violence, the guns and all that, is very impressive. I had a lot of fun playing it. I wish there were more levels, but I understand that the scope of the game was more like a AA game. I'm very happy they got out of early access, but it's a UE5 game, so performance is not amazing. It runs better than most UE5 games, but still, I wish. But it's basically sprites in a 3D environment. There's a lot of 3D stuff, good lighting. But I don't know, considering how the game looks, I was expecting it to run better, especially in certain locations with volumetric fog and all that. But otherwise, it's a very fun game that I really got into. I wasn't expecting it. Personally, when I saw the first game, I skipped it, but when I saw the second one, I found it to be pretty catchy to the eyes, that comic book thing. And then when I started playing it, I was like, okay, this is it. I'm a huge fan of Doom and boomer shooters, so I highly recommend you play this one. Very visceral, very fun, and with a good amount of options when it comes to difficulty. I just wish it was longer. For number 9, we got Call of Duty Black Ops 6 campaign. So I'm a huge fan of Call of Duty campaigns. And personally, with Modern Warfare 3 last year, I was super disappointed. Super short campaign, very low effort. There were like, when you were speaking to your teammates that you usually see in the ground with you, they were just like radio chatting. So I thought it was stupid. Also, there were some open maps that felt like very basically recycled Warzone maps with bots in the middle. Well, for Black Ops 6, the campaign, I think it was pretty interesting when it came to the story, the setting, the amount of maps. It was a pretty lengthy campaign, at least in my opinion. And the story, I don't want to spoil anything. You should play the previous games if you want to understand what's going on. I think has that Call of Duty spirit. The control's great. I love the Omni movement system, which reminds me, of course, on how Rainbow Six Siege did the movement when you're on the ground in prone position. But I guess for Call of Duty, that's a new feature, which is fine. In the past, I played a lot of multiplayer. I'm not a huge fan of multiplayer games nowadays. I play a lot of campaign, just because I enjoy a good story with very good gameplay. When it comes to the fluidity of the shooting, I think they did a great job with the sound design as well. When it comes to performance, at least in my opinion, it's okay, but I think it's unacceptable that you have to be connected to the internet at all times to be able to play the single-player campaign. It's been like that since, I think, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2019. And now that feature came to consoles, so even if you're playing on a console, you have to be online to play the single-player, which I think is stupid. Also, if you're a fan of zombies, you're probably going to like zombies on this one. I love, again, the gunplay is pretty smooth. It even runs on PlayStation 4, so that's all you need to know. But if you're looking for a Call of Duty campaign, just get Game Pass and you can play the game just fine. Although if you have a Steam Deck like I do, you need Windows in order to play it, unfortunately. Number 8 is God of War Ragnarok PC. So God of War Ragnarok came to PC this year, and I know it's an older game, it came out on PS4 as well, Well, yeah, but it came this year to PC, and I was very impressed when it came to the PC port. It even runs on an SD card on the Steam Deck, which I think is pretty impressive. Performance stuff aside, I had to finish the first game. I wanted to go fresh to the new one. I didn't want to have any spoilers. So I finished the first game, and this continues the trend of the original. Has a very lengthy campaign, great story, interesting characters, and the combat is expanded over the original. I love that you get the classic Kratos' blades at the beginning. In the first game, I was itching to get rid of the axe as much as I love it. But on this one, again, I think performance is amazing, gameplay as well. The story is a direct sequel to the previous one, which I highly recommend you play on PC as well. While I'm not a great fan of the puzzle sections in these games, I really enjoy, just the combat itself puts it above and beyond, at least in my opinion, so that's my number 8. Number 7, we got Red Dead Redemption 1, the PC port. So finally, Red Dead Redemption, after 14 years, I think it was, we got a PC version. Before this, you needed to play it either on the Nintendo Switch emulator, the PS3 emulator, or the Xbox 360 emulator. Now you can play it on a PC, it runs like butter. It really didn't have any major problems with the port. Everything was fine, at least on my side. It runs on a potato, obviously, but it has way better draw distance than even the PS5 version. So I could run it at 4K, even on a GTX 1650, which again, is to be expected. This is not a remake, it's just a port of the original with a few improvements when it comes to, again, draw distance and shadows. But I really love Red Dead 1. It's one of my favorite games. It's finally on PC. I can finally aim with a freaking mouse and keyboard, which now I don't need to use Deadeye to take birds up the sky or do great pinpoint accurate headshots. It also includes the Undead Nightmare DLC, which I played a lot on the PlayStation 3. Well, now I'm playing it on my Steam Deck, having a lot of fun, and it's very stable. But at the same time, I'm disappointed when it comes to the missing multiplayer. I played a lot of that in the past. There's some co-op content that without multiplayer is completely missing. Same with the Horde mode in Undead Nightmare. That was on multiplayer, now poof, is gone. So that's the only thing that I would say it's a bummer. Also the price tag, $50. Just wait for 50% off. And it's a huge pickup, at least in my opinion. Play Red Dead Redemption 2 in the meantime. Number 6, Stalker 2. So this one released very recently, but I was surprised on how much I enjoyed it. I played the original Stalker games when I was very young, and I was like, what, my gun isn't hitting anything? Well, that was probably because I was running while shooting or something. But this is the franchise that is a grandfather of Metro. And Metro is a franchise that I played from beginning to end on the highest difficulty, and I revisit them from time to time. And when it comes to Stalker 2, it really feels like one of the previous games. From the little time that I spent on the previous Stalker games, this feels just like it, although with way better graphics and a more open map. The thing is, there is a lot of bugs and performance issues that they're patching from time to time. They're slowly making the game more stable and less buggy. Although it's an absolute miracle that this game came out at all, considering it's being made in Ukraine. Of course, they outsourced some of their stuff and they moved from country to country, but still, it's a very difficult situation to be in. When I was streaming the game, just because I'm speaking to chat and all that, I was playing on easy, so it wasn't much of a challenge. It was a very simple game. But on my own time, I tried normal and hard, and definitely you need to play this game in hard mode. It's very challenging. And also it makes you think a lot about, okay, how much ammo do I have? Should I engage this group of people or not? It's a very slow burning game. It has a lot of stuff to do, which I really like. But I do love the nuclear post-apocalyptic theme that it goes for, like Metro and the previous Stalker games. So if you want a very tough game with survival and having to pay a lot of attention in mind, if you're into that sort of thing, I highly recommend this one. Metro is less hardcore than this game, but you can lower the difficulty, although I think this game really shines on hard. If you're not on hard, it feels like just another shooter with not a lot of dynamic stuff to it. I guess it's for accessibility, but if you played Metro, I highly recommend you play this one on hard. It really does make a difference when it comes on how you approach gameplay. It feels more like a survival game in that regard. My number 5 is Ghost of Tsushima PC port. So Ghost of Tsushima got released on PC very recently this year, and is one of my favorite games that came out on the PlayStation 4. So yeah, this is a PlayStation 4 game that they later got a patch for the PS5, and now it's on PC. And despite the age of this game, graphics are gorgeous, the story is very gripping, there's a lot to do. I feel that this game deserves all the praise that it's getting. I have lots of hours on PS4, a few hours on PS5 when I had a console, and on PC now I have over 30 hours. I'm looking to get every achievement like I did on the console. The only thing that I would say is a bummer on this one is that I couldn't import my save from the PlayStation 5. But it came out with frame generation, great performance, some crashes from time to time, especially on low VRAM GPUs. But in my experience, it even works well on Steam Deck, so fantastic game, great visuals, great PC port, and also when it comes to combat, once you get the timing down, you might want to increase the difficulty a little bit, but there's a very extreme mode that you get hit once and you die. So that's completely optional, of course, but there's also multiplayer and co-op, which I highly recommend. So lots of content, great graphics, great combat, what else do you need? Number 4 is Black Myth Wukong. This game, I thought it was never coming out when I saw the first trailer. I remember it was like super detailed and I was like, okay, that's not happening. And it was an Unreal Engine 4 game. They had a very early vertical slice when they showed the game for the first time. Then they got new developers and all that. They started building the studio and got to UE5. And this is a great looking game. But then when they jumped to Unreal Engine 5, I'm guessing they wanted the visuals to be the best that they could. But since it's an earlier version of Unreal Engine 5, it looks to be way more demanding, which, I mean, the game looks fantastic, so it makes sense. We get the traversal stutter and some bugs here and there. But what makes me the happiest about this game, apart from the graphics and the gameplay, is that it is not yet another Souls-like. The game is actually accessible, yet the bosses can be a bit tough if you're not used to that sort of thing. But it's not as punishing as a Dark Souls game, as an example. They didn't limit their vision with the story, with the characters. They have fantastic environments and design. Again, they didn't care what everybody was saying about the story and the characters. They just went for it, built it, and if you don't like it, don't play it mentality. I really enjoyed that. At least for me, it's more of a slow burning game. Once you get the hang of the combat, you're going to be able to beat bosses very easily. At the beginning, it was pretty punishing to me. I played it a little bit on Steam Deck, but in later levels, I got a lot of performance issues, so went back to the PC. So if you have a PC that can actually run the game properly, I highly recommend you get to it. It's a very good action game, and it's not a Souls-like like other people say. My number 3 is very unexpected, and it's Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. This game, when it was just announced, I was like, okay, Indiana Jones at this year, what year is it? I was completely confused. Apart from that, what year is it mentality, I was like, okay, Machine Games is developing it. I'll be cautiously optimistic. Hopefully, it's an entertaining game. Considering what the developers do, I was expecting it to have lots of guns and stuff, and I was like, okay, maybe it's a linear shooter or something straight out of 2012. But no, actually, it has some elements of Hitman, that you can change your clothes and be stealthy in the level, and there are more like open locations, so you don't have a huge map, you have smaller contained maps. It feels more like, yeah, like Hitman, that you have those separate levels that are open and you can go wherever you want and sneak in, go guns blazing, which in this case is punches blazing because guns have very little ammo. They are there, but they are optional. Being a huge Indiana Jones fan from the first movies that I watched when I was a kid, they were already old at that point, I really felt that they nailed the spirit of Indiana Jones on this one. It's not a Unreal Engine 5 game, which is rare to see nowadays. It's an id Tech game like Doom Eternal, and usually that one with bigger maps had a bit of a performance issue. In this case, it's mandatory to have a ray tracing capable GPU because there's ray tracing always running, which is disappointing in my opinion. Also, if you have less than 8 GB of VRAM, you're not running the game. The game will refuse to launch. Maybe you can launch it with a mod, but it's not stable, which I think is the biggest drawback from this game. In my opinion, if you want to enjoy this game the most, put the puzzles on normal and the combat difficulty on hard. If you want to go even to the highest difficulty on combat, stealth will play a way major role So don't play on easy or normal when it comes to combat. I think hard makes a lot more sense. It requires you to think about your approach way more than on normal, because you die in a few punches. Of course, if you get shot even once, you're going to die. But that makes complete sense. It's Indiana Jones, not Spider-Man. But I was missing immersive sim type of games. This one surprised me quite a bit. Number 2, Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. So I'm a huge fan of Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z and all that. And when it comes to this game, I didn't know it was coming out this year. So as soon as it came out, I streamed it. It was a lot of fun. And when I had a PlayStation 2 back in the day, I played a lot of Budokai Tenkaichi, and I was like, most of my time was spent on those fighting games. And this feels just like it. Complete fan service, they put a lot of characters, they put great graphics. It feels like playing episodes of the actual anime, which is fantastic. Personally, I don't play multiplayer. I like doing the campaign, and if you do certain actions, you can change the story, and it makes its own little different parts of the story that is like a parallel to the original. And due to have that many choices with the story, I think they went a little bit too cheap on the cutscenes. It's like characters standing and you can see subtitles and they're doing the voices, but they're not animated. So that felt kind of weird, but I guess to have that much content, they had to cut corners somewhere. Hopefully that's improved in a later patch, but I don't think they're going to do it. That felt like kind of the opposite of a premium game. It felt more AA when it came to cutscenes. And if you're a fan of Dragon Ball, you cannot miss it. It's complete fan service, so I highly recommend you go for it. And when it comes to performance, I was pretty impressed, but at the same time, if you drop below 60 like other fighting games, you're going to get the game to slow down, like in slow motion. You can fix that with a config file tweak, but I think that's something to keep in mind. And finally, number 1, my game of the year is Star Wars Outlaws. I mean, Warhammer Space Marine 2. So Warhammer Space Marine 1 is a game that I discovered way after it came out. I was playing, I think, on a GTX 1050 Ti, and they gave away the game for free. I think I have a video talking about it back then. And I really fell in love with the gameplay, the gore, the amount of enemies on screen. And Space Marine 2 feels like more of that. Saber Interactive really used their engine to its absolute limit. The engine that they're using is the same that they're using for World War Z, which I'm also a huge fan of. And you have lots of enemies on screen, lots of gore, lots of blood everywhere. It's clear that they want to keep the game going with lots of updates. I saw some performance improvements when it came to the PC version. They now added even frame generation. I need to double check it on the Steam Deck, although on Steam Deck it was below 30 across the board. It's a very demanding game, but at the same time it's tons of fun. You get flamethrowers, your guns all explode everything. But what I personally like the most about the Space Marine games is that you have melee and shooting at the same time. It's not 100% shooting or 100% melee. It's very well balanced, and there's also more traversal than in the previous ones. So you have those huge set pieces with lots of enemies, lots of gore, and you can really feel the kinetic impact of every hit. It's very, very satisfying, at least in my opinion, and if you are into Warhammer lore, you're probably going to also enjoy this one a lot. Personally, I'm not a Warhammer fan, but in particular Space Marine, I really dig it. And you can also do co-op with your friends or play with bots. The bots are not completely useless, but it really feels like a game that you should play with other people. Personally, I play solo across the board because my friends don't own the game. But you can feel that the meat of the game is thought around playing co-op instead of solo, so keep that in mind. And those are my top games for this year. Again, just my opinion, the games that I enjoyed the most personally. I don't have a lot of time to game outside of YouTube nowadays because work and all that, adult stuff as usual. But the little that I could play this year was really spent on those games that I listed over there. There were a lot of flops as well this year, which was very funny to see, like a train derailing in slow motion type of thing. When it came to, for example, Skull and Bones, Star Wars Outlaws, Concord, Suicide Squad killed the Justice League, No More Room in Hell 2, the performance in Dragon's Dogma 2, and well, all those remasters. So it's been the year of remasters and lots of flops, more than anticipated. And I also forgot to mention, as an honorable mention, Silent Hill 2. I played very little of it, that's why it's not on the list. It's probably one of my ones that it's pending still, so I played it like a couple hours on stream and then I jumped into other games. But that's a game that I really like how they did the art, and it feels very faithful to the original. It's very creepy, so if you're into that sort of thing, you're probably going to enjoy it. I also played a lot of Witchfire. Witchfire is a game that it's on early access and came to Steam 2 or 3 months ago. It's more of a roguelite game from the creators of Painkiller, and you can see that from the visuals on their own. But I'm going to talk about that game once it hits version 1.0. But that's basically this year. Hopefully next year we get GTA 6, and in 2025 we get GTA 6 on PC, who knows, or maybe it gets delayed. But I have high hopes for 2025 for having very big titles, now that we're 4 years into the PS5 Series X and S generation. It took a while. Hopefully we get better performance and more Sony PC ports. I'm very excited for the PC port of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. The Last of Us Part 2 also is getting a PC port, so combat with mouse and keyboard on that one I think will be a lot of fun. So yeah, let me know your top games in the comment section below. I'll be super interested in discussing that with you guys, and I'll see ya next time. Bye guys, thanks for watching.